Hi, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to today's podcast with JeanBookNerd.com. This is Narry, and today we're going to be talking to ALEX KIESTER about her new book about Ben and June. And quick excerpt here. From the moment Ben and June met in a hospital waiting room on New Year's Eve, their love seemed fated. Looking back at all the tiny, unlikely decisions that brought them together, it was easy to believe their relationship was special. But now, after several years of marriage, June is struggling as a new mom. At times, she wonders about the life she didn't choose, what might have been if she hadn't given up the lead role in the famous ballet to start a family. Feeling like a bad mom and more alone than ever, she writes to her deceased mother, hoping for a sign of what to do next. One morning, Ben wakes to the sound of his baby and quickly realizes that June is gone, along with her suitcase. As Ben attempts to piece together June's disappearance, her new friends mention things he knows nothing about. A mysterious petition, June's falling out with another mom, her strange fixation on a Greek myth. The more Ben uncovers about June, the more he realizes how little he actually knows about her, and now the only way to bring June home is to understand why she left. Told through alternating perspectives of husband and wife, the truth about Ben and June is a witty and wise page-turner about life's many crossroads, and a heartfelt reminder that we create our own destiny. And without further ado, book nerds, let's talk to Alex a little bit more about her new book. Welcome to the podcast today, Book Nerds. Today I'm joined by ALEX KIESTER. She is the author of About Ben and June. She's going to be talking to us about her new book, and we're super excited to have you today on the podcast, Alex. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Of course. And then for our readers and listeners, anybody that maybe isn't too familiar with your stories you're writing, did you want to give a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, about myself or the book? Both?
Let's do both.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I'm ALEX KIESTER. I am born and raised in Austin, Texas. I went to school in Memphis and got my degree in creative writing. After graduation, I sort of dipped into the writing, editing world kind of slowly. I started out as a copy editor and then made my way into book editing at a romance publishing company until I got the courage to start writing my own. So The Truth About Ben and June is my first print debut novel. I had an Audible original come out back in 2019, but this is my print debut. And then so to talk a little bit about the book, my book is about this married couple, Ben and June, if you couldn't guess. They are in their early 30s. They have just had their first baby together, and they're really struggling with new parenthood, basically. So one morning, Ben wakes up to discover that June is missing, but then he also realizes that her suitcase is missing too. So he starts doing everything he can to figure out where June went and why she left in the first place. But the more he uncovers about his wife, the more he realizes really how absent he's been from their life and how little he knows what's been going on with her. So as you can probably tell, there's like some mystery in there. There's also a little bit of humor, but I like to think of my book as an exploration of this marriage and what it means to share your life with another person.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the little introduction there, Alex. And the book itself, I was reading a short synopsis about it just a week ago, and it's definitely something that I would love to pick up and read. It sounds like a little bit of mystery and maybe a little bit of a rekindling of a romance, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of the big inspirations for me for this book was The Painted Veil by Somerset Maugham.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a classic. It's a beautiful book. It was turned into a movie with Edward Norton and Naomi Watts, and it's this beautiful story of two people who are falling in love who have been married for a long time. And there's something about that idea of people falling in love who know each other really, really well that speaks to me in a way that sort of like your traditional romance novels where you meet, one day and then you fall in love. Like that happens to a lot of people. So I don't know, there's something special and different and unique about people who are married falling back in love. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
Awesome. I like that inspiration too. I've read a little bit about The Painted Veil, so that's a really good piece to touch on. Are there any other stories while we're on that topic that or maybe like books or authors that kind of inspire you personally in your writing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So another big touchstone for me for this book was Dear Fang with Love by Ruthie Thorpe. We won't get into too much spoiler territory about why that's a big inspiration for me, but she writes about mental health and mental illness in a really beautiful way. She sort of mines every aspect of it. There's obviously grief and humor. I'm sorry, grief and loss, but there is also humor to that. And she is just sort of paints this comprehensive picture about somebody going through like a mental health crisis. And that was very inspiring to me. And then yeah, authors in general, let's see, I love Ann Patchett. I mean, who doesn't love Ann Patchett? I love Kazuo Ishiguro. I just read my first Immortals. He wrote Rules of Civility. That was really beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about authors, like I could talk about them all day. So yeah,
Nice.
it goes on and on.
Of course. I always like to ask that question to our authors because it's like we're just going to be adding to our never-ending list of books we need to read.
I know. It is so never ending.
And I'm curious about when you come up with these stories, because it seems like such a complex plot line and just with everything going on. So what comes to mind first in your writing process? Do you usually think about the characters or the plot line, or tell us a little bit about your writing process?
Yeah. So for this book, it actually started with me exploring one of my biggest fears. I think that's where my most organic writing comes from, is when I'm just like, I can't stop thinking about something. And I just like, that thing that keeps you up at night because you're so scared about that prospect. That's how this book started. So to give a little glimpse into what I was terrified of, and I kind of still am terrified of it, is the ambivalence of entering into parenthood. So not parenthood itself, but not knowing whether or not I want to be a mom, whether or not I want to have kids. I feel like a lot of people around me in my life have always known whether or not they want kids. And it doesn't so much feel like this effortful decision for a lot of people. It feels like a given. And when I hold that certainty up next to my own ambivalence, it's really, really terrifying. So this book is sort of an exploration of that fear for me. And then I think moving away from that sort of like spark of inspiration, the characters came to me probably next. June is like, I just love her. She came to me very quickly. She's not super similar to me. I'm a writer in Texas. She's a dancer in New Jersey, but we do share a lot of aspects of our personalities. She's very ambitious and driven and hungry to have a big life. And so she was kind of my next glimpse into this book. So yeah, I think it came with this. It started as this exploration of a fear, and then June came to me as the way to get into that story.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that definitely makes sense. That's pretty awesome, though. That's a cool writing process. It's just kind of like a thought, an idea that's been eating at you, and then you finally just put it onto paper and you come up with this incredible story and this incredible plot line.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not so much like it's more of just like how things happen in my brain. I mean, yeah, my writing process, that makes it sound so messy, but that's how it happens.
Like an organized chaos is always a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. And so with the writing process, I'm curious, we're kind of just leading into some other questions, more about you, more so than the story, I would say. When did you first realize that you really wanted to go into writing, or this is something I'm really good at, I want to pursue this as a career?
Oh, yeah, I love that. I actually knew very, very early on I wanted to be a novelist. Truly, I say from the age of 7. I was that kid who walked around the neighborhood, and instead of, I don't know, I didn't have that many thoughts about my own life. I was literally narrating fictional stories in my head. And recently I went to my parents' house and I was looking through some old diaries that I had as a kid. They had kept them. And from a very, very early age, I was writing fiction as opposed to, keeping a diary about my own life. So I always knew I wanted to write fiction. And I always knew I wanted to write novels too, like long form. I think when I really took a gamble on myself, I was 25 and I was working full time at that romance publishing company that I mentioned at the beginning. I was editing books and I felt like I can do this. I was like, I can do this. So that's how it started. I went home for my lunch break because I lived close to my office. And on my lunch breaks, I started writing my first book. And I wrote it almost exclusively on my lunch breaks. It was a romance novel because I was working on a romance company. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then I haven't written a romance novel since, unless you count this a romance, which you could if you wanted to. It's a lot of genres. But that's when I really took a gamble on myself. And then it was a slow process. Like I wrote a manuscript and it was not very good. And then I wrote another one and it was better. And, it won an award. And then I tried to get an agent out of it, but it didn't work. So then I wrote my third manuscript and it won a different award. And then finally I got my agent and she sold that one as an Audible original. And then she sold this one for me. And this is like, of course, my print debut. But yeah, so that's how it all started. And then it was, it was incremental. It was a lot of work. It's been almost 10 years since I really, started and focused on this as my career.
I love that though. That's a lot of persistence and a lot of work. And now we're here. We're talking about your new book.
Here we are.
That's pretty awesome though. When you were in the publishing company, do you feel like that kind of gave you a pretty good head start as a writer, as opposed to if it was just a student coming out of like an undergrad and going straight into writing?
I think so. I did major in creative writing. That's what my degree's in. But I think being exposed to other writing on a day-to-day basis, it was pretty inspiring because I felt like I was getting my feet wet critiquing that. And then I was like, well, if I can critique this, maybe I can tell my own story. So yeah, I think it did. It gave me a window into it. And I should say, like, I was not working in, a Manhattan publishing company. This was like a very small little, place in Austin. But I think it gave me some confidence to say, like, okay, yeah, I can do this.
Nice. When you were starting out, I know that for a lot of people, we usually ask them about like challenges and things like that. Were there any memorable lessons learned along the way to you coming to this point now that you really learned and that kind of really offset your career as a writer?
Definitely. Like, which of the million challenges do I choose from? I just mentioned all the rejection I got. And when you're in the middle of that rejection, when you finish your first novel and you're like, oh my, you spent a year on it, or I don't think I spent a year on my first one, but 9 months, let's say. 9 months is, a significant chunk of time, especially I was 25. And I think when I got that rejection for that one and then for the second one, it's hard to see that this is practice and that that was my foundation. Now I look at it as, oh my God, like, first of all, thank God those didn't get published because I'm so much better than I was. But also that's the foundation that taught me how to write, and that taught me how to not only write, but how to be an author. It taught me how to submit to agents. It taught me how to do my research in the publishing industry. So it taught me so much. And at the time when you're just steeped in rejection, year after year of rejection, you feel like you're never going to get success.
definitely something to keep in mind, especially if any of our listeners are interested in maybe going into writing or pursuing a career even in publishing or anything of that nature.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as the book, just speaking about research, when you write about your characters, like you said, like, you know, you're in Texas, you're talking about June, who's a dancer in Jersey.
Yeah.
How much time do you spend doing research for your books when it comes to topics like that? Or do you draw from any of your personal experience?
Definitely draw from my own experience. I was like a very amateur dancer. I danced in high school and a little bit in college. I taught Zumba to make some money, you know, outside of college. But I mean, June's like way better of a dancer than I am. She's a professional. So yeah, you know, my knowledge ended at like, okay, I know what relevés are and pliés and pirouettes, but I really had to steep myself into research. And for me, I'm so grateful that I write contemporary fiction because I get to actually talk to people. So June dances at the Martha Graham Dance Company, and I just contacted their, I guess it was like their publicity manager or something. It's just on their website. It was maybe at info@marthagrahamdancecompany.com, whatever. Anyway, she passed my email along to the dancers, and I had a few of them reach out to me. And so I just basically sat down and had a Zoom call with them and, you know, chewed their ear off or like, you know, like asked them a million questions. And they were extraordinarily helpful. So yeah, I mean, I spent hours talking about dance in the dance industry with two professional dancers who were incredibly instrumental. I mean, this book couldn't have been written without them. So yeah, that was a big part of my process. And then other aspects, that's how I like to work, is I like to just talk to people because I find that it brings the subjects to life more than just simply reading about something. I mean, I do a lot of reading too, but I really like to talk to people if I can.
I love that. That's super nice. And it definitely kind of, would you say, like maybe gives you like another window into getting to know people in the community, especially since you're getting to talk to like a bunch of people over Zoom? That's super nice of them.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. And now you know, we don't really, I sent them early copies of the book and they're being so sweet and posting about it on Instagram, you know, like we have a connection now, you know, and it's great to connect with other artists who are working in different mediums. So yeah, it's really cool that I feel like, you know, I've made a friendship with these professional dancers who are living amazing lives. It's like very humbling to, you know, say that I know them. So yeah, it's very cool.
I love that. That's awesome. And I'm curious because I know that the book is going to be told from like two different perspectives, from Ben's and from June's in a sense. How do you get into the mind? Because obviously it's probably easier to write from the mind of a woman. How do you get into like the male voice, and how does that kind of, I guess I should say, what inspires you to kind of write in that voice and kind of get into character?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think for this book, I felt like I had to speak from two sides because it's about this marriage, and marriage is, you know, traditionally between two different people. And so I wanted to really show both sides of that. And it was hard. You know, I've never written a male character before. And what really happened is that I was trying so hard to be like sound like a man and like think like a man. And then I finally realized like Ben is a human and I'm a human, and most humans go through the same thing. I mean, I know we don't go through the same things. We all have different experiences, but you know, I think we still have the same inherent, like we all want to be loved, we want to find love, we want similar things in life on a grand scale. And so once I realized, like, this sounds weird, but I just wrote him like I would write a woman, you know, and I would write a woman how I would write a man. Like we're similar in that sense. So I just wrote him like a human. And I gave him some of my own fears. And the other thing that unlocked him for me is finding out his basic desire and his basic fear. And his basic desire is that he wants to be a good person and he wants to have a positive impact on the world. And his basic fear is that he's not doing that. And so once I figured that out, then he kind of unlocked for me.
Nice. No, I totally get what you're saying. Like, we're all human. We all have our experiences, man and woman, similar, like little differences here and there. But I see what you mean. That's definitely cool, though.
Yeah. And I don't want to act like, like we all have the same experience. That's not what I'm saying. But I think we do have like the basic desires and basic fears. Like I kept thinking, oh, men like don't have the same insecurities that I do. And I was like, well, why not? Like, why can't Ben have this insecurity that I deal with? So yeah.
That's great, though. I think maybe it might even give some of the readers finding Ben a little bit more relatable in that sense too.
Yeah, I like that.
That's most of my questions that I had for you about the book and kind of just about your writing in general. Is there anything that you wanted to share, maybe from your personal or like something that you like to enjoy outside of your writing career?
Oh, interesting. I don't know. It's so funny. Like I haven't been asked this question yet in an interview, so I haven't thought about what to say to it. I guess I will say, this actually isn't outside of my writing career, but I had the opportunity to co-write a book that's coming out in August. So maybe I could, say that as well. So that book is, it's a mystery novel. It's called All Good People Here. And I co-wrote it with the true crime podcaster, Ashley Flowers. So that's coming out in August. If that's leaning into my, like the mystery roots. So,
Nice.
yeah, I realize that's like the opposite of what you asked me. It's not outside of my writing, but
No, you're good. Anything that you wanted to share, we're totally open to. I mean, this is about kind of getting to know you and your book. So
yeah, cool.
yeah, definitely a cool little tidbit to share, though. It's something to look forward to, especially once people finish reading about Ben in June, they'll get to kind of go into your next work.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very cool. It was a fun collaboration. I mean, it was fun helping her write that.
It's been so fun talking to you, Alex.
Before we wrap up today, I just want to say huge thank you again to Alex for joining us for today's interview. And Alex, before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to any of our listeners?
Hi, I'm Alex Kiester. You are listening to the JeanBookNerd podcast. And to find more information about it, you can visit JeanBookNerd.com.